Oh, yes. It is so nice to live in a fault-free world.
Is it working for you now?
It's good enough.
Okay.
I'll give it 85%, and that's passing. There's no need to mess with it anymore.
Let's see how it comes out in the recording then.
Yes. So it's been a while. What you been up to?
Yeah. Um, First of all, sorry for not calling so long. It's been a wild couple of weeks for me. Um, so one thing that happened is it seemed I really stirred up some stuff in meditation, which was not very pleasant. Um, and
That's
that,
what happens. That's in fact that happens right from the very get-go. The first time some student recognizes their mind has wandered away from the breath,
yeah,
that stirs stuff up right then, and you've been stirred up since then.
yeah. So the way it went for me, it stirred up, I think. So this is just my hypothesis, and I'm just gonna try and stick to explaining it very simply without me going into any theory what I think might be going on. That you can do that, but I'm just gonna stick to the simple stuff. I
All
don't want
right.
to I don't want to um yeah, put my interpretation of what happened on top of just me talking about it. So
Just the facts. Okay.
what happened is um so going back even further, like um 4 more weeks, so like maybe 2 months ago, something similar happened where um my meditation was going along very well, in my opinion. I was having no trouble sitting. I was sitting for long periods of time, over an hour at a stretch. It was very pleasant. I felt like I had great concentration. I was very optimistic. Things were going well. And suddenly everything went away. Everything crumbled away from seemingly without cause. So for no apparent reason.
When
And
you say crumbled away, what precisely crumbled away?
so I could not, the sits were no longer pleasant. They were very unpleasant. There was a lot of tension in the body. Um, I could not stand sitting, which is
What what was in the mind? What was the mind doing?
the mind
What
was
hindrances?
um, there. I think the main hindrance was probably, I don't know, there was definitely doubt in there in terms of why is this happening? I don't want this to happen. Um, it it felt like I had unlearned to meditate, as if I was like all the progress I had made was deleted, and I was
Okay.
starting from
That
scratch.
gotcha. All right. That doubt that you're talking about would be the primary issue after you recognize that all of your skills seem to have brought it away. So
Yeah,
before the doubt, what was the experience? What did you recognize? What was in the mind?
I felt a lot of aversion. So
Okay.
I was
To what?
very, I was not liking anything that was happening. So just the just the even the idea of sitting. So I had one experience that's maybe a good example. Um, I was sitting at my desk, like in the afternoon after work, thinking, man, I should probably meditate. It's about time to meditate. And the thought came up, I hate meditating. I don't want to do it. Um, let's do something else. And so I had an okay amount of mindfulness apparently, because I decided to investigate where that aversion to practice was coming from. So I kind of caught myself being like not wanting to practice, and I thought, shit, what's going on? like this aversion shouldn't be there, or it didn't used to be there at least. I don't want it to be there. Let's see what's happening there. So I kind of like briefly closed my eyes and started to like feel inside my body,
Uh-huh.
and my entire body was just tension all over. Like the entire inside, like my body was filled up like a loaded spring, or like a huge rubber band that's about to tear, or like a balloon that's about to pop. Like it was extremely uncomfortable. I didn't like it one bit, and it was very hard to even um, to face. It was very rough, and
Sounds
I
like you
couldn't.
really got yourself worked up.
Yeah, I mean that's kind of an extreme example. It wasn't like that all the time, but there's a phrase that I really like that kind of captures it. It felt like my body was a hive of angry bees. That's one metaphor that I've read that kind of captures it. Um,
Did that example of the body being like a hive of angry bees, did that passage in that book describe either where it came from or what to do about it?
um, yeah, I think this was a description of one of the dukkha ñanas in a book that I read.
All right, and what to do about it?
Yeah, it basically recommends to keep practicing. So
Well, that's not much help, is it?
yeah, especially like specifically to do insight-based practices to
All
move
right.
things along.
Yes.
Uh, yeah.
Let me let you in on a clue. You've missed an important ingredient. It's the very ingredient that I know is missing in the West, and it's the one that I harp on. And you gave it away when you gave me the description after you recognized it. You didn't like it, and like you went grumpily looking into what it was doing. So you had gotten yourself into a state of I don't like it, and you didn't address that. You just went after I think I'm going to fix this by investigating it, when in fact all the investigation that you needed you just done. I don't like it. That's the investigation. Once you see that feeling, you automatically already know what to do about it, and that comes with that phrase, "Aha, I caught you." But never did you do that. You just got deeper into it, thinking that, and in fact, in that regard, that nanayanas that you're talking about is simply from people not practicing correctly. And so they get themselves down stuck in something. And the right answer is yes, keep practicing, but don't keep practicing wrongly.
That sounds like good advice. Um, yeah, I feel,
Remember, this practice is supposedly good in the beginning, good in the
yeah.
middle, and good in the end without yanas and all of that kind of
So
crap.
I've heard. Um, I feel like I am able to do that with. So right now I'm in a very different state of mind. So something
Ah,
shifted back again,
okay.
and I am now m- a lot more able to do that. So something comes up, um, and I'm able to see it, to investigate it, whether it's a thought or an emotion, um, or even just like the mind wanders away. I'm able to catch it pretty quickly and just see it for what it is, not get super hung up on it or make it into a big deal, and just go back to the practice in the correct way. So not getting myself stuck in something. And I find that it's pretty easy now, but back when I was stuck, it was the the amount of stuff that was coming up all at once was much more than I could handle. It was too much at once. I couldn't deal with it. I couldn't disentangle it, um, and it kind of um,
Now wait a
yeah,
minute. Let me see this. From what I understand, you've been living your whole life stuck in this muck. And all you could do is come up with a journal. I don't like it. Now that you're actually seeing it, you're trying to make it even a bigger deal than it was before, which I understand because normally we're in denial because we don't want to see how bad it is. Now that you're seeing how bad it is, you at least should be able to take joy, and at least I'm looking to see how bad it is right now. All right.
yeah,
Here's another way of looking at it. There is the concept of despair, which is probably the yanas that you're talking about there in that list of Mahasi stuff, because it can get pretty deep. Have I have we in fact talked about despair
yeah.
versus disgust?
Oh, versus disgust specifically? I don't think so.
Yeah, despair and disgust are very, very much related because what we do want is we want to be disgusted with all of that crap.
Yeah,
But we don't want to be in the sense of despair because then that means that it's too much. It's like an avalanche. It fell on us, and for me, I'm buried with my own crap.
yeah. That's the situation I was in.
Okay.
That second one.
All you need is a change of attitude.
That's much
That,
easier said than done. I'm
yes, I know. And that's where right effort comes in, based in right view. But I tell you, the reason what's really going on is not the effort that it takes, is to remember to do this. To remember that, oh, yeah, that's right. The mind goes into these funky states. Let's watch what happens.
yeah.
All right. Now, here's something very interesting that most people, even if they read this passage in the sutras, they don't understand it. Because we, as Westerners, we over intellectualize and intellectualize everything, including we over intellectualize the Dhamma. And so the seventh knowledge, the full fruit of Sotapan, is when we can, in fact, take delight in the Dhamma. Taking delight in the Dhamma. That's the description. Being delighted in the Dhamma. Now, here's the point. Many people think taking delight in the Dhamma is like reading some sutta that they haven't read before or after read in a while, put it together with something, and come up with an insight. They say, aha, now I see it. That's not what we're talking about. Taking delight in the Dhamma is, in fact, being able to take delight in seeing this crap, because that's
Mm,
the Dhamma. And we
mm,
need to learn to take delight in seeing that stuff. Ha ha, I see you. Why? Because if you can't see it with delight, then you see it as an enemy. You'll see it as not just an enemy, but a powerful enemy. And so you become afraid of it, especially when it begins to avalanche. You begin to see a lot of it. Much better way is when it starts to avalanche, you can start saying, "Ah, I see this, and I see that, and I see that. I can see this one too."
yeah. I think that's exactly correct. What it did, or what it tends even now, and I'm sure this could easily happen again, is what it tends to do for me is it's overwhelming. So that attitude of, oh cool, I get to see all these crazy things play out, let me investigate it, that's I have not been able to have that attitude, or I haven't had it. It's more of, I don't want this. It's getting worse and worse. How can I get out of this? How can I make it stop? And one thing that really
That's what
frustrated
needs to
me.
be brought to a stop. How can I make it stop is what needs to be stopped.
Yeah.
I now I know that sounds really weird,
No, I get it.
but okay, because what you're doing is that how can I make it stop is what the victim is screaming when he feels like he's going down the sewer. Or in
Yeah.
your case with the word avalanche is when that stuff is piling on. How
Yeah.
can I make it stop? You still haven't come to the position of, and how you do make it stop is by taking delight in the fact that you could see it there, because that stops it. Taking delight stops it in a major way. Because why? Really, technically, what's happening is the wisdom that comes in at that point of contact. When mindfulness comes up, if we say, like, aha, I can see that crap, then you can have the right effort to come out of it right then and there. Now, what you're doing is that you're doing the very human thing of putting this thing on a clock or on a calendar, thinking that I can't deal with it right now because I'll have to keep dealing with it and dealing with it. And how can I make this stuff stop? It's in an avalanche. Where, in fact, all you really have to do is take care of this one right here, right now, with aplomb, with glee,
Mm.
okay, with the noble attitude, and manage it right here, right now, just this one, then that's the skill that you're developing so that the next time it comes, you can come right back with it with this stuff. So in fact,
Yeah.
the avalanche doesn't happen all at one time. The avalanche is something that like piling on one after another, after another, after another. But if each one of them that comes, if you feel satisfied with that one, then what the heck when the next one comes by? You can deal with it and be completely satisfied. And when the next one comes, you can deal with it happily. Oh, yeah, I'm getting some experience with this stuff now. Out you go. And then the
Yeah.
fourth one comes in and we say, wait a minute, I see you coming. Caught you early.
Yeah. I guess it's, would you agree that it's more difficult to apply this the more intense, for example, the emotions are? So with small things, I find that I'm able to do it more and more, um, and it seems easy. I guess that's what you're pointing to, that it's not hard to do it in a single instant. What makes it hard is thinking about the fact that it's going to go on for a long time.
That's exactly what you need to stop doing is
Yeah.
thinking about it. It's going to keep going on and on.
But
Instead, you
is there
you rely upon the fact that, and this is a fact, that you've just had a major breakthrough with an aha that I can deal with this stuff right here, right now, every time it comes up, or at least this time it came up, and I whacked it. I can
yeah.
play whack-a-mole, and I only have to hit one of them at a time.
Do you think that it's also more so, is the intensity of it, of the stuff that tends to come up, also a factor? Because what for me
Well,
tends to happen is that the
yes and
intensity.
no, but here's the thing. You're thinking that it comes like this, that it comes that way most of the time, and then occasionally go whoom like that.
Yeah.
Okay. That's not how it goes. What it goes is it comes up like that, and then you think about it, and then it gets up like that.
Mm.
It grew on you because you were thinking about it because you didn't have mindfulness right at the beginning. So the question is, how big does it get before mindfulness comes in?
Yeah.
How big does it get before you recognize how big it got before you saw it? But
So it,
whenever you
yeah.
see it, you say, "Yeehaw! I can see you."
Yeah. What do I do when I didn't do that, and I find myself in the position where, we
Did
use
you
the
say
analogy of,
yeehaw? I see that I did not say yeehaw.
okay, yeah, I mean, right now, so it seems very plausible to me that it makes tremendous sense, but I, to be to be perfectly honest, what happens to me is stuff that's very painful and very unpleasant comes up seemingly.
Are you talking about thoughts that give rise to feelings? I would assume so.
Yeah,
What is it that comes up? Right. So it's thoughts.
it's an amalgamation of thoughts and feelings.
Hmm.
It's like I don't have I don't have the necessary mindfulness to untangle it. So it's this huge mess of
Don't bother to untangle it. Throw it out untangled.
yeah. So what I was getting at is I find
No,
myself in this
think about that
situation.
just for a second. Throw it out untangled. You do not have to untangle any of that.
Yeah, that's what I mean. I find myself unable to do that because I mean, so with a small thing that comes up, I can just easily throw it out now. It's like this tiny blip and it comes up and I'm like, huh. It's like waving away a mosquito. It's not hard. It's like it's just this little thing I need to do and then it's okay. But with these things I'm talking about, it seems more like a 10-ton truck or train coming towards me and I'm trying to swat it away with my hand. It doesn't have the
Yes, that's right. That's exactly how you do because it's not a 10-ton truck, it's a 10-ton feeling. And you can swipe those away because they don't weigh anything. The 10 tons is how much it feels. But you can get that out by taking a deep breath and say, wow, I don't have to feel that way. I don't have to think about that thing. And so here's the point. If you want to do a little bit of untangling, the way to do it is by saying, I'm not going to think about that anymore because when I think about it, it runs me down with a 10-ton feeling. And I don't even need to ask you what that is right now because, in fact, it changes from time to time. It can be strange things like getting your car fixed
mm,
or taking an exam or moving your house or whatever like that. But there are things that come that these hindrances to the mind will come. But underlying that stuff is anxiety. And we'll dig down to that anxiety. Actually, the Buddha's word for it is restlessness
yeah.
that comes when anything is not secure. But in fact, you've got this stuff coming up when in fact things are secure, relatively secure. And yet, some sort of memory or some sort of story that you tell yourself comes up and it brings up a 10-ton feeling along with it. And you feel like you've been run down by that story. So
Yeah.
here's the point, make that story off limits. Make that story completely out of bounds so that any time you even start to tell that story to yourself, you say, okay, I can see that story coming. Out you go. Clear example of that would be that there has been an old time man who has been associated with the Wat. He's one of the, call them deacons if you like, for one of the board of directors, and he's been there for many, many years. And now a young new monk comes on and he winds up getting in an argument with that young monk. So this old man goes home, but he's wise because he says, all right, not only am I going to throw that argument out of my mind and that young monk out of my mind, I'm going to throw the whole Wat out of my mind. Out it goes, the whole thing, because he knows if he starts thinking about the Wat, it's going to wind up down in
Mm.
that feeling hole, almost like in astrophysics they have a black holes with event horizons and all that kind of stuff. So the idea is
Yeah.
if you see this black hole out there, You avoid the galaxy it's in,
Yeah, it sucks you into it.
because it will suck you in. So your job is to be mindful as at the very beginning as you can, saying, oh, I'm not going to go down that rabbit hole. I'm not going
Yeah.
to think about that person. All right. The Pali word for this is atamayata. All right. The word maya in there is actually the same word as Mara, which has to do with the world or dukkha or the devil is another definition. But you could actually use that word for argument, and everything about that argument is off limits. Atam Maya, which means I'm not going to do Maya. I'm not going to mess with that. Don't mess with it anymore. In English, it would be translated that word into relinquishment or let go or whatever like that. But in this sense of Atam Mayata, you're going to let go long before it comes,
Yeah.
as opposed to be stuck in that argument in your head, feeling all of those feelings of anxiety and everything. That's not the time to let go.
Yeah, in a sense, it's kind of, it's not too late, but the longer it goes on, the more difficult it gets, because then you have to kind of work yourself back out of it, and that's what I was referring to. Like, if you catch it at the very beginning, it's only a small blip
Yes.
in the mind, and that's really easy. Like, that's easy to throw out. That takes almost no effort. It's just a tiny thing.
Ta-da! That's the Dhamma for you.
Yeah,
You just gave it in a nutshell. Exactly so. That's it. When
but I
you catch
always,
stuff really early,
yeah, I, however, I find myself not not being mindful enough, I guess. Um,
never mind, start again.
yeah, here I am. it, I just wish it wouldn't take like 2 weeks for me to kind of fall all the way down to the bottom of the pit.
Another way of doing this is say, oh, I'm really satisfied with my success in my practice. Look what I've discovered about myself. Next time it won't take so long to fall down such a deep hole.
Yeah,
Always look on the bright side of life. That comes out of the movie Brian.
yeah. I found that I'm not very optimistic at times. It correlates very clearly with my emotional state. So the more positive emotion that there is, the more optimistic I get, and it's a it's a good barometer of how I'm feeling. You know what I mean?
Yes, the Buddha not a victim. The Buddha a lion.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's the
yeah,
way. So we have to be we have to develop the strength of the mind, the strength of character. And part of that strength of character winds up being to take delight in whatever comes by, not only including, but especially the really deep buried stuff that's so painful and difficult to locate and root out. So we take delight in locating that stuff and rooting it out. And we get
yeah,
started with um, throwing out intellectual stupidities like belief in religions or belief in welfare or belief in governments, all kinds of things to believe in big business. Oh, if I buy that car, I'll be happy.
yeah,
Okay, so the first thing is we have to throw out a whole bunch of belief systems. And when we throw out all the belief systems, then we start looking at the Dhamma directly in the sense of what is suffering, what's the nature of suffering, etc., like that. By doing that, we become dedicated to the path. And that dedication is sati, dedicated to wake up, to see what's going on over and over and over again. And every time we see it, we take delight in it.
yeah. Um,
There's a
Yeah, that's
pony in
good.
here somewhere.
Yeah, it's I have to say that the way you explain it is very, it makes a lot of sense, and I've seen myself do it successfully.
Hmm.
It's just, I feel like what often happens is my capacity to deal with stuff is like this big, and then suddenly a thing comes along that's like this big, and it kind of um, it gets too much for me to handle, and I've had that happen more than once already, and
Is it located in the body? What is it that's this big when you only feel this big? What is that? Is it a thought or a feeling or a bodily sensation? What
it's
is it?
it's mostly bodily sensation, which is mostly tension and pain, and it's also thoughts. It's a mixture of mostly bodily feelings and thoughts.
All right. Well, if you're this big, how big was that when it was over here? Was it this big that as it comes, it gets bigger? Or did it just appear out of nowhere, just full size, full
Yeah,
blown?
probably not, but that's what it feels like. It's like I've had the experience of just waking up one day and everything's like down the toilet from
Uh-huh.
like just overnight, seemingly.
Okay. Let's go back to that story for just a minute about the old man. And every time he thinks about that monk, he gets more and more angry. And he knows that. That's why he's wise. And he says, I'm not going to think about the temple at all. Why? Because if he does not have any mindfulness, he starts to hate that monk. He starts to want to harm the temple. He starts to want to do things that will satisfy his deep feelings. But if he has mindfulness, so that every time that he thinks about the temple, he says, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to stay away from that temple completely in my mind. Over time, it will go down. Why? Because he's giving it no mental energy. But if he does not have that wisdom to say, I'm going to keep that temple out of my mind, then every time he comes down to thinking about that monk in that argument, he rehashes it, he makes it more, he feels even more dissatisfied, he wants to do more and more and more damage, and he hates things even more and more. So
Yeah,
he gets down to that level because he is not on guard.
yeah,
And so this is all about getting to be on guard. How soon? In other words, as I'm drawing my hand down from its very, very light down to its very heavy, that can happen within a second or so,
yeah,
especially if you've already been down here. So the best thing to do is to catch it way up at the beginning. And so that's the way that you can do it, is making whole topics off limits. An example of that is today I'm not going to think about writing any emails to anybody,
hmm,
because I know there's this one email that needs to be written, and gosh darn it, I hate that guy.
yeah,
Okay, so that's the way to do it, is to mark off the entire topic, the entire area. That's the way to do it, so that the mind gets some space. So that later, like a week or two later, then when you start thinking about that the what again, you don't have to do it with the intensity that you had built up.
yeah,
That's the way to do it, is get it out of the mind, get it out of the mind. That's what the major training is to be able to choose what contents you want to have in the mind, moment by moment by moment. And so sati is going to help you to wake up to deciding, what do you want to have in your mind after all.
yeah. I guess I'm still skeptical that I I can have that much control over it.
Practice, my son, practice.
Yeah, it just seems so difficult. Um,
Actually, success, let us say it like this, progress is when you're satisfied with your progress.
yeah,
Right now, you're not satisfied with your progress. You want your progress to be up there. All right. How can you become satisfied with your progress? I mean, after all, look at all of the crap that you've been seeing. You saw a whole avalanche of it. Now you know where that avalanche lands. You won't stand there anymore.
yeah. One thing I've been wondering is when when we're when a situation arises where we need to be very careful not to get sucked into something. So that analogy or the story of the guy who had the younger monk had the argument with the younger monk. Wouldn't that mean that we need to be in that situation in order to keep that whole area off limits? Do, does that imply that we need to have a large amount of sati at every single moment in order to basically check up on the mind whether it's going there?
Yes, precisely. But that old man, he's been a Dhamma dude for years. And so he has the strength of mind and the character of mind to know that if he starts rehashing that argument with the monk, he's going to wind up suffering. He's going to wind up angry himself. And so
Yeah,
through that knowledge and wisdom of dukkha, he will become determined. I'm going to be on guard to not let that thought into my head.
yeah, I see.
That not only that, but he can do himself great damage by going over to the temple and starting an argument with that monk again. The next thing you know, half the town is there watching him lose his mind.
Yeah, and then
And so he's
he will be on guard very very strongly um, for whatever period of time it takes for that thing to lose its intensity.
precisely.
Yeah.
All right. Except with the real Dhamma dudes, as we become on guard intensely just to make sure ain't nothing going to come up.
Yeah.
But we start
Yeah.
identifying it one at a time. In this case, I ain't going to be bothering with that temple. Atam Mayata, the temple is out. Don't you dare come into my mind, Mr. Temple.
Yeah. I've actually got to go soon, but I wanted to mention one more thing
Okay.
in terms of good news, because I've been complaining basically all the time that we talk now. So I just want to mention one thing that's going very well.
Yes.
And I've really started intensifying my practice of generosity,
Good for you. Good, good.
because that was about the only thing I could actually do, because it doesn't require the let's say formal. It's not a formal sitting practice, but it's a practice nonetheless.
It
So
is.
I've been I've been expanding my generosity on multiple fronts recently, and I'm really putting some effort into that.
Good, good. And doing that with a smile, I bet you're beginning to enjoy it.
I've been enjoying it the whole time. It's really nice.
Excellent. All right. Well, we'll talk about that next time, but congratulations. That's excellent.
Yeah, it's I've I think it's under it's underappreciated because it doesn't seem as significant because you're not sitting there on the cushion. So it doesn't seem like real practice or something. But um, yeah, I think it's pretty powerful.
Yes, it's well known. All right, Martin. Well, we'll see you, what, in a week or so?
Yeah,
Whatever.
I'll try not to make it 3 weeks again. Um,
Okay.
talk to you next week.
All right.
All right.
Keep the. Oh, one last point, and that is there is an expression about the word elephant in the room. Okay, for that old man, his elephant in the room, in his mind, is that what? So he's going to make sure that that elephant is not. We're going to address that elephant. Any elephants that come into your room, that's the big ones that get there really quickly. So you're going to say, okay, this elephant is big in the sense that the entire topic is off limits. That I'm going to be on guard. I'm going to be dedicated to make sure that I do not have those kind of thoughts. And the first one, I don't know which one, but you can find your own list. And in
Yeah.
fact, it's normally a short list, but it changes over time. Things that
Yeah.
used to bother us don't bother us anymore because we won't let it. We won't let it. Won't allow it in.
Yeah. Yeah, it makes sense. I was actually starting to go through it in my head, like what are the things, like how do those chains of like association go, where it starts with one thing that leads to the next thing, and before you know it, you've been ruminating for 20 minutes about some useless stuff. I've been trying to, yeah, I need to look. God damn, I need to keep. What I just realized is, even though I think I know what's going on and I think I have a good handle on it, when I really think about it, it turns out I don't really see it that clearly. It's more of like I haven't really looked at like what thought leads to what thought and how does it go exactly, because that's kind of what you need to know if you want to be on the lookout for that first element in the chain, so that you
You
can see
keep
that.
watching. You keep watching. You'll figure that out. You'll figure that cause out, and you'll say, okay, that whole sequence of events, that whole line, that whole story, out.
Yeah, I'll report back on that next week.
Excellent, excellent,
Thank you so much for your time today.
enjoyable.
Bye.
Bye bye.